in North Carolina. He will close things out with a rally in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Our final NBC News poll before the election shows the race is a dead heat. Harris and Trump are both at 49%. Both campaigns are making their final pitch to voters before the polls open nationwide tomorrow.
It's ours to lose. If we get everybody out and vote, there's not a thing they can do.
When you believe something is possible, you put in the hard work, and you know it's good work. Hard work is good work. It's joyful work, and we get the job done. Let's get this done.
Our Decision 2024 coverage starts with NBC News correspondent Garrett Hake in Pittsburgh covering the Trump campaign, and NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez in Allentown, Pennsylvania, following the Harris campaign. Thanks both for being here. So, Gabe, we'll start with you. Vice President Harris will be in Allentown later today. You have some reporting about her campaign's outreach, specifically to Latino voters in Pennsylvania. What have you learned?
Hi there, St. Clair. Well, the campaign really is ramping up that outreach, heading to Reading, Pennsylvania a little later on today to a Puerto Rican restaurant, also taking out new ads and really ramping up their get out the vote efforts to target that specific community. And St. Clair, as you know, there's been a lot of controversy specifically among that community following former President Trump's Madison Square Garden rally several days ago, where that comedian told that offensive joke. We have been speaking with voters here in Allentown, which is a majority Latino city, all day. And the anger, the outrage is palpable in this community, and it could make a huge difference in this must-win swing state. Take a listen to what some of the voters told me a little earlier.
It was a wake-up call, and Puerto Ricans were able to gather together and come together. Like, I know people that were swaying to the other side and are now swaying towards Kamala.
Puerto Rico might be a small island, but our pride is extremely large. It's humongous. So once you offend one, you offend all.
There are 34,000 Puerto Ricans or so in Allentown, again, in such a tight race with razor-thin margins that could make all the difference in Clay.
Yeah, absolutely, Gabe. Thank you. Garrett, let's move to you. We mentioned former President Trump holding a rally in North Carolina earlier today. I know you have some reporting that his campaign maybe is a little nervous about that.
They are, Kate, although they don't want to admit it. And North Carolina's been challenging for Republicans over the last couple of cycles. It's just a tough state to defend. Barack Obama ran it in 2008. Democrats have been frustratingly close in their mind to taking it back in subsequent elections. But after 2020 and the post-COVID kind of demographic shift there, a lot of folks moving from other parts of the country to North Carolina. Couple that with the continuing fallout in the western, more Trump-friendly part of the state from Hurricane Helene, and it's just very difficult to get a good picture of what the situation really is on the ground in North Carolina. Both campaigns kind of seeing it as competitive, but having a muddy view of what's going on there. Even the early vote there is a bit confusing. Republicans brag that they've had a higher turnout in early vote there than they've ever seen from Republicans before, but it's almost exactly evenly split between Republicans, independents, and Democrats there. So it's a state where the Trump campaign, despite projecting confidence publicly, has been adding events in these last couple days of the campaign. They say from a kind of a cover-all basis perspective, but they don't want to see a state that's so important to their path to 270 slip away from them on election night.
All right, Garrett Hake and Gabe Gutierrez with the latest. Thank you both so much.
Let's dive deeper into the final NBC News poll with NBC News national political correspondent, who better than Steve Kornacki to go through it with us. Steve, beyond the headline, we said it's a really close race. What else are we seeing?
Yeah, I mean, doesn't get closer than a 49-49 tie in our final national poll here. Look inside it a little bit. These are the issues, and some of the key issues, how voters are analyzing the candidates on them. What we ask here is, on this issue, would you prefer Trump or would you prefer Harris? This is and has been Harris's biggest strength this campaign, abortion. By a 20-point margin, voters say they would prefer Harris dealing with this issue than Trump. Now, look at the other end of it. Where does Trump start to rack up the big margins? Well, inflation and the cost of living. Again, this has been consistent throughout the campaign, even when Joe Biden was the Democratic candidate still. Small double-digit margin for Trump there. And then Trump's biggest advantage has consistently been the immigration and the border. Again, this was also true when Biden was the nominee. So we see a tie race, and we also see sort of more of what we've been seeing when it comes to how voters are looking at the issues. There's also this dynamic, too. Remember, Kamala Harris is the vice president in an unpopular administration. How much is that going to cause her trouble? How many in the way of headwinds? Biden has a final approval rating in our poll of 41%. That's if an incumbent running for re-election with that number, it would be very dangerous. That's why a lot of Democrats were happy to see Joe Biden leave the race. But Harris is still part of this administration. Voters aren't too happy with it. How will they assess her in regards to that? And then there's this. We also ask, and it says retrospective. We're basically asking voters in hindsight, do you approve or disapprove of how Donald Trump did when he was president? 48% now say they approve of how Donald Trump handled the job of president, notably, obviously, higher than the current Biden number. And this is higher than any poll we ever took during Trump's presidency for his approval rating. Is that benefiting Trump a little bit? There's also this. This could end up being the story of the election, the gender gap. We've been talking about it in every election, it seems, for decades. But have we ever seen it like this? The answer is no. In our final poll, Trump with an 18-point advantage among men. Harris, 16 among women. You tally those two together, it's a 34-point gender gap. The previous high was 24. This is 10 points higher. If this is what we get, 10 points higher than any previous gender gap we've seen in presidential elections. And that ties into the big surprise over the weekend. Iowa, a state no one's talking about. One poll puts Harris ahead. This is a shock to everybody. Is it real? We don't know. But one thing to keep in mind, what would be powering Harris here? The gender gap.
Yeah, Steve, can we dig into that a bit more? It's a bit surprising, that polling showing Harris leading in Iowa, especially since Iowa is not considered a battleground state this year. Why does this matter?
Yeah, well, it's for two reasons. First of all, in terms of what does it mean if the poll is right, if this poll is onto something, and the pollster does have a very good track record in Iowa. I think the key question is it something that's just happening within Iowa? And the argument for that, in short, would be abortion politics have been center stage in Iowa since this summer when a 6-week ban went into effect. It's hugely controversial. And while the presidential candidates haven't been campaigning there, they have congressional races in Iowa that are razor thin, and there have been millions of dollars spent in ads this fall on abortion-related ads. So this issue has maybe particular resonance in Iowa, and it could be just an Iowa phenomenon. But the question then becomes, are there other states we haven't been polling that could surprise us if we did?
Right. We'll know soon. Steve Kornacki, thanks so much.
Got it.
And be sure to join us for complete Decision 2024 coverage on Election Day tomorrow. It starts at 5 p.m. Eastern, streaming right here on NBC News Now. Then it picks up on your local NBC station at 7 p.m. Eastern, continuing to stream as well. I'll be anchoring overnight alongside Craig.